Okay, welcome into the seventh episode of the Milwaukee Bucks on Tap podcast. Corey Mullen, Evan Byrne. Um, Evan, before we get into the games, I just want to apologize to everyone who is listening out there because last week I just moved and I tried to record in my room. Not great. It's not great. I noticed some of the audio got kind of cut in and out. Probably on my end because it's hard to record when you're in your room. And I just noticed that it wasn't even just this podcast either. It's the other podcast I do for Metal Dimes. Audio is cutting in and out. My podcast partner said he couldn't hear me, so just want to take the quick time to apologize to anyone if the audio cut in and out for you guys. So let's just get right into it. The Bucks had 3 games this week, 3 road games in Atlanta, in Oklahoma City, and at San Antonio. Evan, let's start off with the one in Atlanta. Not a lot of positives to take from this game.
No,
The Bucks only played one good quarter. Second quarter they didn't play it that well, and then the third quarter, which I'll get into in a little bit, it was what I like to call the third quarter from hell because they got outscored 37-22. So let's get into kind of the stats of what we noticed from this game. Milwaukee had a season high 19 turnovers against the Hawks, 5 of them from Giannis. So what do you kind of take away from that game for the Bucks' ball handling issues?
it's hard because it's that where you just lose the game by a lot, where it's like the smallest thing can lead to such a blowout. They only scored 98 points, and it was that promising first quarter when you go up 11. You scored 36 in the first quarter, and then they barely scored a little over 36 in the second half. So, but the turnovers and the steals, I think, were one of the main reasons as to why they lost, just because it leads to so many extra possessions that the Hawks are getting compared to what the Bucks are losing. So it wasn't good. It wasn't good, especially in the second half.
It wasn't good, and the alarming thing is that Atlanta didn't have Trae Young.
No,
If they had Trae Young, we would have been like, all right, well, Trae Young is the top 7 player in this league. Like, he'll beat anybody.
yeah.
There was no Trae Young.
Which is what hurt the most, I think, out of all the things for their first loss. They lost to the Trayless Hawks.
Exactly. And look, we knew DeJounte Murray was a great player. He went off for 25. The one that I didn't expect to happen was AJ Griffin.
Yep.
Seemingly, AJ Griffin did not miss a shot. He shot 10 of 15 from the field, 24 points, and Milwaukee just absolutely had no answer for him.
And which is not, it's a good thing, obviously, for the Hawks to see like that stat line from him. I think he's only 19. But my goodness, every time he came up the floor, he would shoot and he would make it. It seemed like he had way more than 24 points. Like looking back at the box score, I didn't look at it until a lot of time after, but it seemed like he had 40 or 50. He was shooting lights out the whole time.
And DeJounte Murray, like I said, I understand how good of a player he is, but he was one of those guys kind of like AJ Griffin where it seems like every time he shot, it was going in. He shot 11 to 24, which I honestly thought it would be like a little more because it felt like he could not miss. Like he it wasn't even just like a heat check. Like he was unstoppable offensively Monday night.
It was very consistent where it wasn't like every single shot in a row, but it was like one every like 3 possessions he kept making. So it seemed more repetitive. But he also had 11 assists, which makes it seem like he's in the game a lot more than just shooting. But yeah, he really picked up the Trae role, I think, in that game, almost having a triple-double. And then AJ Griffin, obviously, being their one to step up compared to all their other guys, especially their starters.
Yeah, and I just at the first topic, I mentioned the turnovers. 5 of them were from Giannis. Look, Atlanta has a great strategy on how to defend Giannis. Okay, kind of like the Heat do, and kind of like the Raptors. They
Yep.
just because those two teams have those three teams, I guess, have one thing in common is that they have bigs who are quick and who can kind of like bother Giannis. They're not going to let him just get anything in the paint.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that Monday night. Atlanta has Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu,
Yep.
who are
Okongwu,
two
yeah.
great defensive bigs. Bothered Giannis. Giannis didn't have. I mean, like he still scored 25, but he didn't have a great game. 9 of 20 from the field. Like I said, 5 turnovers. They've just found a strategy on how to defend Giannis.
Yeah, and obviously they had him in the conference finals a few years ago, so it's not like anything new. They didn't really get rid of a lot of players. They just kind of brought better players in. So it's like it's frustrating to like know that it's these guys who are not like these superstar players being able to stop other superstar players. It's like Dellavedova stopping Curry in the finals. It's like you get the obviously Okongwu and Capella are not randoms, but it's just like you wouldn't expect those guys to lock up like the best player in the league, which is always frustrating. But Giannis respects it. He doesn't get like annoyed by it and like completely like bashes them as players. He respects them, I think, and it's nice to know, but it's so annoying.
And you actually brought that up because Giannis, and like you said, Giannis does respect it because he said in an interview that I respect guys who go at me. He said when he's coming down the lane, he see people be like fearful. He's seen like fear.
That would be me.
But like he said he respects people who like go at him, who don't back down. And Atlanta has exactly those two guys who just don't back down from Giannis. And
yeah, and I feel like that's a total like throw off for Giannis too. When you see guys ready to go, it's kind of different of shoot, what am I gonna do compared to I'm taking them all the way. If you can like see like the small hesitant, but it works for them and it works for a lot of those other smaller teams where it's you may not win a lot of games, but you're winning the games where a lot of people are going to notice it a lot more.
True, and like we mentioned before, third quarter from hell. The game basically ended in the third quarter because Milwaukee seemingly turned the ball over, missing shots. And Atlanta, that's really when I believe DeJounte Murray and AJ Griffin really got cooking in the third quarter.
Yeah, to only score 40 points in the second half and you scored 36 in the first quarter, like it, and they had 22 in the second and the third quarter. So it's like it wasn't like a slow drop throughout the game. It was 36 and then 22, 22, 18, where it was like nothing was going in. Every single turnover was not going their way, and they were scoring a lot on turnovers. Yeah, they had 11 steals, 18 turnovers. So it's 50 points in the paint is not good. And a lot of that was just from the turnovers.
Yeah. And look, I've told people this, because I've talked to my other friends about this, about like when the Bucks were 9-0 heading into this game. They're like, "Oh, you could be 12-0." I'm like, "Watch out for Atlanta."
Yeah,
I'm always leery of Atlanta because they actually have a good squad.
Yes, and they have good coaching where they know how to coach against these better teams.
Yeah, and again, even without Trae Young, I still think that's the reason. I think if they didn't have DeJounte Murray, I think they probably would have won this game. Because let's be honest, Kevin Huerter's not scaring anybody. So
I feel like even with Trae Young, I felt like they could have had a better chance like going into the game because sometimes Trae Young will score 40 points, but he'll chuck up a lot of shots where it's like you can get a lot of more possessions. But yeah, don't sleep on the Hawks. I feel like sometimes.
And even John Collins even chipped in 14. Like they just have like those 3 long guys that can like defend Giannis really, really, really well. And it kind of forced the other guys to step up, which obviously didn't happen Monday night because, I mean, the only person who had a semi-decent game was Drew Holiday, who went 7 of 14 with 14 points or 16 points, excuse me. So, Like I said, not a lot of positives to take away. And I think the even more alarming one was the fact that Atlanta had 11 steals. 3 of those were from the guys we just mentioned before, DeJounte Murray and AJ Griffin.
Yeah, it was a tough loss. I would have
Yeah.
rather had them lose the Thunder and the Spurs game. Obviously, they lost the Spurs. We'll get that later, but that was a hard one to lose because we know we had Giannis and they didn't have Trey. So, but they weren't going to go 82-0, so you can't be too mad.
True, and I mean,
You're going to lose games like that.
We're going to lose games like that. Like I said, we're going to have. I'm just going to read out the rest of the stats. 12 offensive rebounds, 3 each from Okongwu and Capella. So I'm just going to say the Bucks opponents' offensive rebounding at the moment is a little alarming because currently we sit middle of the pack.
Yep.
So that could be considered alarming. Like I said, Brook Lopez is not a spring chicken anymore. He's not, and without Giannis in there, even though he played, despite the fact he played Monday night, sometimes it's hard for him to just wipe away everything.
Yep. And once he's off, it's not like a lot of times you're gonna get that turnaround game, especially if you're getting locked up in the paint where you're scoring your most points.
Yeah. The one part that did surprise me though was the fact that Milwaukee had 9 blocks. And Javon Carter had 3 of those. Like Javon Carter led the team in blocks.
Javon Carter had a week. He had a week.
We'll get into that a little bit, but yeah, that surprised me a little bit. But yeah, you're right about Javon Carter. Before we really get into it though, I think both of us were wrong about Javon Carter because we just thought this is a guy who could just not hit wide open threes. Oh no.
He showed us.
Javon Carter, let's listen to the podcast. He was like, no, I'm going to show these guys. I'm going to show these guys that.
Oh, yeah, he was listening.
Hey, he was listening, all right. So, yeah, we'll get into the next game. On Wednesday night, they played the Thunder. Won in double overtime, 136 to 132. This was really what I like to call the other guys' game because Giannis didn't play, Drew Holiday didn't play. And this is what I like to call the Javon Carter game. 36 points, 15 to 27 from the field, 12 assists, 4 rebounds, and 5 of 10 from 3. What do you make of Javon Carter's performance against the Thunder?
It was, again, unexpected. He's one of those guys where I want him to play a lot, but that is not what I'm expecting him to do. But to get that game out of Javon Carter is mind-boggling. It was the first quarter he was hitting his threes. Some were wide open, some were a little more contested. He had some couple jump shots. He had some finishes throughout the game where it was he started hot and he continued to stay hot, and he knew it too. And it was just so random and bizarre to see him obviously have a career night, but to have that kind of career night, 36 points, 12 assists, it was absolutely crazy.
Insane. And the funny thing is this is only against the Thunder. Javon Carter had a season high, or career high, I guess, if you want to consider it, 18 points, when they just played the Thunder about a week ago. So,
and then he doubled it. Yeah. Within a week, you double your career high.
It's funny. It's like this account on TikTok where it's the best players, Javon Carter versus the Thunder. He just
he. Well, and a lot of it is people. I've seen some say oh, well, it was overtime, so some of it isn't too crazy. But he still had. I think he tied his career high in the 4-quarter regulation. Only had 4 in overtime, but still 36 points. It was cool to see. This whole game was so over the place. I've never watched a game where I've been so frustrated. Obviously, it was one of those games where it's it was cool to win, but my goodness, I was all over the place during this game.
Yeah, and look, the funniest part from Javon Carter when they were like,
The interview.
Javon, when did you know you were gonna put on a performance like this? When I woke up.
And you could see it in his eyes as how serious he was, and like so many people like picked up on that. That one like super viral. That was a lot of NBA
Baller. Yeah, that was funny. But look, it wasn't even just Javon Carter either. Like all 5 starters scored double figures. And I mean, look, it was just basically a game for the other guys to step up. Now, granted, it was against the lowly Oklahoma City Thunder. I could watch the Thunder 100 times. I probably couldn't name half the roster. I know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really good, but he hit that step back 3 against West.
As soon as he stepped back, I knew, because there's so many plays that he has where he steps back, and I like look and I'm like, oh, that's the game. And I wanted them to win. I wanted the Bucks to win that game so bad, because I hate when they ruin career nights. Like Javon Carter, like losing that game, it has to suck knowing that your career high in both points and assists was against like a double overtime loss. And Marjan scoring 19, I'm like, oh, that would be such a killer. And it was so close to like being that game, obviously with that step back. But in the fourth quarter, they were up 8 points with about 2 minutes left in the game, where it's like, it's a comfortable lead, but a run could be a minute. But it was like so late in the game where like you could hold it a lot more, but it was turnover and turnover and turnover. And you had the pass in that they stole, and then the sleep of Brook where he just let them cut to the hoop, and I was like, they're gonna lose this game. And the first overtime, obviously with the step back, and then that okay, I'm gonna quick side rant, and I hate when broadcasters do this, especially when it's for the team that you're doing.
Yeah.
When Brooke got fouled,
yeah,
it was Marcus Johnson and Lisa. I always forget her last name, but
Lisa Byington.
Yes, she kept saying, "Oh, Brooke Lopez has not shot any free throws this game, and who has been on this streak of like 10 for his last 10," and they keep talking about how well he shoots, and I'm like, you're gonna jinx it. And then the first one he shot, he missed, and I'm like, you can't talk about free throw shooting when you're in a critical position, because it happened a few years ago with Brooke Lopez. They lost the game because they talked about him being so good at free throws, and he missed both of them and they lost. And then he missed the first one, and I sat there like, oh my God. It's harder to make the second one after you've missed the first one than to like miss the first one and know that you tied the game, to then go and miss the second one where it's like, okay, like I tied it, but I was like, stop talking, please, you're gonna jinx it. And then they got this lucky play, and I like, it's so hard to like see like them like talk about like things where it's like, ooh, it's gonna happen, and then it like almost happens, and you're like, it's like you're on thin ice. Like sometimes when you're mentioning that, it's like one of my rants where it's like, oh, it's so hard to hear them like talk about like, oh, they're doing so well at this, and then
they miss
that first one.
Yeah. I didn't catch that, and I want the only thing I want to know is like, do the players hear that? Like, I want to know if they actually like hear the broadcast, because I remember there was a clip from like 2 weeks ago when Reggie Miller was talking about how well Steph Curry was shooting from the free throw line, and then he missed it, and then he looks over into the TNT section. So I want to know if they actually hear like what the announcer is saying, because they're courtside, they sit pretty close. So that's the one part I want. I was like, do the announcer or do the players hear what the announcers are saying, especially when it comes to free throws?
Yeah, I never really thought of that. I feel like they have to maybe sometimes, because when they're checking in, like sometimes you'll see like them like sitting like exactly where Marcus Johnson is, or you can see him a few feet away. But if it gets loud, even with the mic up to your face like that, I feel like you still have to talk a little louder. But I feel like they do, but they try to like tone it out. It's like when you're shooting free throws and the crowd is screaming at you, you obviously hear that, but you're so used to tuning that part out. But yeah, I feel like they have to hear a little bit of it.
Yeah, and by the way, Jim Paschke would never talk about free throw percentage.
No, it
Jim,
was
Jim, Jim Paschke knows better.
yes.
Jim Paschke knows better. So I know I mentioned about like the all five starters scoring in double figures. Which one in particular stood out to you?
Going away from Javon Carter, mine would be Marjan, just
No.
because he started off kind of slower and then picked it up a lot more throughout the rest of the game. He started out, I think, like 0 for a couple, but then ended 7 for 13. So he ended up making more than he missed. And his 3-pointers, 5 for 8 on 3. So I know he missed his first 1 or 2, but then he was making the ones he needed to make. And it was a lot better confident wise, and like knowing that he's capable of making those shots. He just needs the time to do it. And
Yeah.
I think no Marjan bias, but I think his was more surprising than or was the most surprising out of all of them outside of Javon, because we know Brooke could get 20 games, Bobby obviously, and Grayson Allen too. But yeah, seeing 19 from him after again the Thunder game, he had his career high. He again added some more onto it, but his threes looked really nice that game.
I'm gonna go Brooke because I don't want to say it's necessarily surprising the fact that he picked up the offensive slack Wednesday night with Drew Holiday and Giannis being out, but it's just the fact that it feels like this year more so than any other year. And granted, last year you know he missed a lot of time with the back surgery, but it feels like this year it feels like he's like a little more involved offensively than he had been in years past. Like it just like, you know, I understand he can shoot the 3 ball and he can hit from the inside, but this year, I don't know, it feels like he's on a mission to kind of prove that he still has some game left, because look, back injury, like that can be debilitating. That you know, players can miss you know, an absorbent amount of time due to a back injury. So that one, so Brook Lopez this year, it feels like he's on a mission to kind of prove everyone wrong, to say, you know, I'm still here. Like, you know, like
and
the Bucks defensively go as I go, both offensively and defensively, it kind of feels like.
Yeah, and he's doing a lot more than just sitting outside the 3. Like he only had 1 3-pointer, so getting the 24 or 21 from the paint, he took 23 shots, which obviously isn't something that will happen throughout the season without Giannis, Drew, and Chris, but he still made a good chunk of them. But yeah, he had some late game paint shots, a couple step backs where he felt a lot more comfortable down low without Giannis, and sometimes even Drew, where he didn't have to rely on the 3-ball as much, which is always good because, again, whenever we see Brooke with Giannis out there, he's always kind of shying back as Giannis is the rebound and the paint guy. But yeah, 24 and then 13 rebounds was pretty solid, I think, for him on that game where Giannis wasn't there.
Yeah, and the last one that kind of stood out to me a little bit, because I know you mentioned this in your Facebook post, and I just looked up the stat. Oklahoma City had 16 offensive rebounds.
Yes, and it was Josh Giddey. Like the boxing out was just it was just not there, and it was so many times, especially like in overtime and then late in the fourth quarter when it was like, okay, like haha, let's get the rebound, and you're like, when are they going to start doing it? It was whoever would even Josh Giddey sometimes would shoot it from like top of the key and he would still get the ball. It was they had so many guys in the paint where the ball like bounced away and they were like slowly trying to get it, or it seemed like one person thought like, oh, I'm gonna move because I think Bobby's gonna go get it, and then no one got it, and then here they are with the rebound. And it seemed like every other possession, especially late in the game, was like 2 offensive rebounds or 1 offensive rebound because no one was boxing out or no one was even going for it. It was annoying because there were possessions where they missed 2 shots, but they got 2 more boards and then they got a 3. And it was like, okay, well, that was a waste of time because they got 3 free points after they just could not grab the rebound. I think that was the biggest hitter in the entire game was offensive rebounds.
Yeah, and you mentioned Josh Giddey. He had 5 offensive rebounds.
It seemed like
And
he had 100. It seemed like he was not. Yeah, it was a frustrating thing because that ultimately almost led to like them losing the game.
and then I'm gonna butcher this guy's name. Pogoreski.
Yeah, Pogacheski.
Pogacheski, yeah, he had 4. He also made a couple threes, so
Yes, and it seems like it's always the games against the Bucks where like Marcus Johnson was like, "Oh yeah, and he's only hit 8 3-pointers this whole year and then he had like 5 that game." I'm like, it's always the games where it's
against
the Bucks where these guys always have like their career nights or out of the blue games where it's like, "Oh, he's never really hitting threes, but here he is scoring just as many as he has the whole year." And I'm like, of course.
Of course, it's against Milwaukee. So yeah, obviously able to pull one out against OKC, 136 to 132. Next game up against the Spurs. I have a side rant to go on a little bit. So okay, so Friday night, I couldn't watch the game. I went to the Bruce Lee battle. Badgers played Stanford. I actually went to the women's and the men's game, so I couldn't watch it. I watched it on the Bally Sports app. The Bally Sports app only aired an hour and 38 minutes of the game. So with like about 6 minutes left in the fourth, now granted, the game was over, so whatever. But with like 6 minutes left in the fourth, it cut off.
That's Valley Sports. I hate Valley Sports. It sucks so much, especially the TV app. The TV app is horrible.
Yeah.
The phone is a lot better. I haven't had the cutoff like that, but I am all in on that. My brother says that. My dad says that. Ooh,
horrible.
It's bad.
Horrible. Come on. Like an hour and 38 of the game. So I missed like the last. So I didn't even see who played the rest of the game. I was like, because when I viewed it, I was like, that's weird. Hour 38 seems a little.
Yeah, it's
short.
a little.
It's a little short for an NBA game, and sometimes who knows? Maybe it was like a power outage or something. But no, they just cut it off an hour and 38, and it was basically after the last time out when Keldon Johnson hit the 3. So it was like, yeah, just cut off. I was mad. But once again, this was the other guy's game. Giannis didn't play. Second straight game. Drew Holiday didn't play. Second straight game.
Grayson was out sick.
Grayson was out, non-COVID illness, which, by the way, precipitated to Milwaukee getting a delayed game penalty because I think you have to give like the referees like enough notice to who's starting. And with that Grayson Allen being a really late scratch, they had to throw Jordan Nora in there. We'll get to him in a little bit. But
yeah, this game, I didn't get to watch a lot of it. I was out the night, but I was keeping tabs on it.
Yeah.
And what bugged me the most is you see like without even looking at the Spurs, you see their stats, and obviously the biggest thing is their field goal percentage.
Yep.
But you see 17 for 23 on threes.
Yep.
You see 21 offensive rebounds, 5 blocks, 7 steals, 13 turnovers, which is a lot, but they were less than the Spurs, and 14 fouls to their 22. Where it's like, okay, like that's not a horrible game shooting wise. Sometimes you can shoot low but still win. But then you see the Spurs shooting 43 for 85. They shot, was the math, 13 less shots, but they hit 11 more, where it was one of those games where it was like, you didn't do too bad. Obviously shooting was like kind of but you let 43 of their 85, like they shot 85 shots and they still won by a lot. The Bucks, their game was like every other quarter was pretty good, like 27 then 19, 30 then 17. Like it was one of those games where had you made your shots in the second and fourth, I felt like it could have been a lot closer, maybe take off a couple of their shots. Obviously, that's how basketball works. But it was like you see 21 offensive rebounds and you lose 111 to 93. It was one of those games where it's like some of those stats, it just doesn't make sense when you look at it overall. But yeah, it was an annoying game. But you had every single player was out. When your best player is Brooke and Bobby, it's kind of a bound to lose game most likely because you don't have your shooters and your main scorers out there. So only 3 or 4 double figure guys. So one of those games where it's like, that sucks, but what can you expect when 4 of your 5 starters are out? Your main starters, obviously including Chris.
Yeah, and the alarming stat to me was like the Spurs having 13 blocks, 4 from Jakob Portal and 4 from Charles Bassey. Like it seemed like anytime we just got anything in the paint, they would just like windshield wipers, just wiping it away.
Yep, swat it away.
Swat it away. It's just 13 blocks is an insane number. But I think the good news is, and we've mentioned it before, at least Javon Carter and Brook Lopez had solid games. Javon Carter had 21 points and 7 of 15 shooting. Been very solid on this road trip.
Yeah, and Serge, almost a double-double. Serge had 11 and 9. That was not a bad game. And Sandro got to play. He played a little bit, I think, in the Thunder game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Very few minutes, but it's still it confuses me as to why he's only getting 6 and 8 minutes in throwaway games. Or it's games where they're like everyone's out, why can't he play? I am pro Sandro getting minutes, and obviously you see 3 points and 4 rebounds in 8 minutes. It's because he's getting like the lower 8 minutes. He's not getting like consistent 8 minutes. But yeah, that game was a tough loss, but it was one of those where it's like, okay, like I would have rather had won the Hawks and the Thunder and lose this one as their first loss, but again, can't go 82-0.
Yep. Not even just Sandro. Thanasis got minutes too earlier in that second quarter.
Yep, and my dad was telling me because he got to watch it more that they put him in and then he totally screwed something up and then they like yanked him like a minute or two later. It was like, oh shoot, like he had some like turnover or a couple turnovers where it's like, all right, why don't you hop on back?
Well, I like Thanasis.
I do too. He's one of my favorites.
Marcus Johnson said this about Thanasis, and it's true, is that he said he was talking to like a coach friend of his, and you don't play Thanasis 20 to 25 minutes, but give him like a 6 to 8 minute run to kind of
heat up a little bit.
Well, to kind of give the Bucks a little juice, a little energy. He's an energy guy. Okay, he's not out there like this is a guy who's gonna give effort 1,000% of the time. He's not strong with the basketball. Just based on the fact that it was a perfect bounce pass and he like fumbled it out of bounds. He's not the strongest with the basketball, but he's an energy guy. Okay, that's what everybody calls Thanasis. He's always supposed to be out there for 6 to 8 minutes, so that guys like Giannis or whoever he's coming in for can get a rest before he's like out the rest of the game because I think Thanasis only started like 1 to 2 games in his whole tenure with the Bucks. So,
it's frustrating to finally see him get minutes just to like have him just when he gets the ball. Like I know he's an MVP in the Euro League. Like he's not like some random scrub who they just picked up because it's not like he's a bad player, but it's hard to see like one of your favorites like go out there and like fumble it a lot, but he's a good guy to have on the team, I think, overall, whether he's going to score 8 to 10 points or have 8 to 10 turnovers.
He is, and that kind of shows how deep the Bucks rotation is that, as you mentioned, he's an MVP in the Euro League, and yet he's like the 12th or 13th guy on a championship caliber team.
Yep.
This team is like extremely deep, have a lot of talented players on there. And really, we've known this all along, is that he's there because he's Giannis' brother. Like, it's good to have a guy like that in the organization, so that, like, I'm trying to think of what the wording is so that obviously So
It's
Giannis,
that, yeah, it's the helpful mentality feeling of like that, like confidence booster, like the calming factor of like if someone gets frustrated, like the it's just like the older brother, younger brother, obviously like relationship of like calming each other down, like hyping each other up. It's obviously they're older and younger brothers, but it's that confidence booster and support. Support, I think, is a good one for it.
Yeah, and we saw like a couple years ago when Giannis got hurt against the Hawks. Like, who was the first guy out there?
Yep.
Yeah, Thanasis. So, yeah, so it's good to have him out there. He, like I said, he won't be seeing many games this year again, because really, like, he's good for one highlight dunk a game.
Yep. He'll
where
have one throwaway game where he has 15 points and he'll hit like 2 or 3 threes somehow. But yeah, people, I think, underestimate his impact on the team. I think he's one of the, like when they show like the pregame huddles, like he's always like hyping everyone up. Like he's doing his role off the court, which is, I think, big on chemistry for on the court.
Yeah. And I was going to bring this up earlier, but I was going to talk about Giannis just a little bit. He's not, I mean, here's the thing. I don't think he's going to be, I think he'll play a lot this year, but I think he'll miss more games than usual. Because I think what people look at for him is his age, because he's what, 27, 28, I want to say. Yep. But look, he's seemingly every year the Bucks have gone deep in the playoffs, okay? And Giannis being 27 or 28, while that age-wise that might be young, basketball-wise, when you really look deep into it, when the Bucks have like played so deep into the playoffs every year, that's a lot of playoff basketball for a guy like Giannis. So for sure, he's going to have like, I feel like load management games a la Kawhi, where he'll play, where he won't play every game, but I don't know. I feel like he'll play a lot.
Yeah, and especially earlier in the season, it'll happen a lot more just because, again, the NBA season, it goes for almost the entire year.
Yeah.
And then he played Euro. Because obviously he didn't play in the preseason. So it's like, and his height, it's harder being taller and like that kind of motion. So it makes a lot more sense, especially in games where it's like, you're not going to see this team in the playoffs. So, and it's helpful for both Giannis and like everyone else too, because if you don't play some of these guys for consistent minutes and then you have to put them in at some like game against like, let's say the Celtics, or you got like some top team where it's like, well, I don't know what I'm doing because I haven't played yet. So it helps both teams. It's just can sometimes again be annoying just kind of wanting to see them play more, but in the long run, it's going to be more beneficial.
All right. So next topic. I want to congratulate Grayson Allen because he is not the player we're picking on anymore. Had a rough start to the season, but he really turned it around. Jordan Nora, jeez Louise. I am trying to be positive about Jordan Nora, okay? Because I try to be positive about all the guys. But for God's sakes, this is what I've known for Jordan Nora. Every single time he gets the ball, he shoots. He has tunnel vision. He has tunnel vision that he's going to shoot no matter what. And even when he doesn't want to shoot, like it's like, oh my God, I got to pass now. Jordan Noah's stats: 29% field goal percentage, 6 field goal attempts a game, and just had overall just a horrible road trip.
Yeah, it's frustrating because they just signed him to a 2-year deal after having 2 very mediocre years. For obviously his rookie year was when they won the finals. But yeah, if you look at his career stats, it's not good, and I feel like it's not NBA worthy good at this point. Like I feel like him being the guy who's not a two-way player anymore, because then you got guys like Sandro and like even AJ Green. Like I feel like try him out a little bit because he can be a pretty decent shooter of what I think they want Nora to be, but they keep giving him all these chances, and he's not good. Like, career shooting 6 points in 18 minutes. Yeah, and like 29 and a half for field goal and 29 and for three. It's not good. Obviously, I'm not an NBA player. Obviously, he would destroy me, but there are other guys out there that they could be getting those minutes, especially 2 years already, and they just signed him for another 2. It's like, try someone else to see how it goes, and then give him the contract or the minutes that you think that he would deserve from that. But I love Jordan Nwora to start, but I'm now becoming a big Jordan Nwora hater, and I don't think he's NBA material right now. And I think
No.
there are G League guys who they show who are dropping 25 to 30 points that
Yep.
could maybe get like 10 points in the NBA or to 12 points, where it's like, let's give some of these guys chances and let's shoot Jordan Nwora away and let him develop a little more. But he's not. What is he getting? He had what? Where's the minutes? Where's Jordan Nwora? 17 minutes in
Yep.
the Thunder game, and he had 5 points and 7 rebounds and no assists. Like, he's shooting horribly. The Spurs, he had 8 points, 3 for 13 on shooting. That's not it. And I'm mad that they're using him consistently like that.
And look, I'm just I'm just trying to think of a nice way to say this, but and I understand it against the Spurs. They had to throw him in late because Grayson Allen couldn't play. I understand that, but at this point, we kind of know who Jordan Nwora is.
Yeah,
And
that wasn't. Yeah,
I remember they had this clip from the Spurs game that I watched. Brook Lopez was wide open from three, right wing. Jordan Nwora hesitates, and they pass it to him, throws him off. It's just he just. I'm the first time I use this phrase. He hasn't played Bucks basketball, where it feels like we kind of pass the ball around, and Bucks have prided themselves on like great ball movement and like finding the open guy. It just feels like every time Jordan Nwora just gets the ball, he just shoots. He's trying to be like Tyler Hero of the Heat, where he's just trying to be our instant offense off the bench, but he's not that guy. This season he's averaging 5 points a game. 5 points a game.
He's averaging 18 minutes this season. And yeah, he's not showing 18 minutes. Giannis could get 25 in 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's Giannis compared to Jordan Nwora. But for a guy who should be a shooter, who's not shooting well, it's hard.
No, and like I said, look, once Pat comes back, and once Pat comes back, Pat, Chris Middleton, Joe Ingles.
Mm-hmm.
Once those guys kind of come back in the fold, like, we're not going to see any more Jordan Nwora because
and like what's weird about that is then why would they sign him to a 2-year deal if they know eventually they're just not going to use him? Like sometimes I really like John Horst, but it's like one of those things where it's like if you have all these guys who are going to be playing all the minutes that Jordan Nwora is getting, why sign him? Or why you could keep him, but like as a two-way guy of like, all right, now you're going to go to the G League for a few weeks and then we'll bring you back up when we need you. But I don't know. I don't make the ideas, the contracts, but yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, every time he gets the ball, it's like a fake hezzy, and then he dribbles around for 5 seconds and then brick, front rim, back rim. Yeah,
it's super frustrating. And it's kind of indicative of the fact that this summer, like, no team wanted to sign him. He was a restricted free agent. And I think they waited until August before they signed him to like a 2-year contract.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah. It's sometimes these players, they are who they are.
Yeah. Every team has a Jordan Nwora or a guy around it, but it's hard just seeing him get a lot of these minutes just to like have him when Sandro could be getting these minutes, or some of these other guys could get maybe like 2 or 3 of his minutes, and and
against the Spurs, he was not that I take this into account because again, it could change game by game, but he was a minus 28 against the Spurs. So by far, he was the worst player on the floor. Minus 28. He was a net negative like when he started because again he didn't know what his role was. And I don't know, MarJon's looked better than him.
Yeah, he has, and it's been 12 games, and he already has shown that. Obviously, MarJon will shoot a little more, but he went again the Thunder game where Jordan Nwora shot 13 shots in the Spurs game, and even only making 6 of 13 for MarJon in the Thunder game, he still made 5 3-pointers, where it's not 3 for 13, but you had 8 points. Where I don't know, I'm not.
All right. Last topic before we get out of here. What do you make of the Grayson Allen trade rumors? I think I believe there's been some talks about the Bucks potentially looking to acquire the Suns' Jay Crowder, who's been sitting out while Phoenix looks for a trade partner. So, first off, do you think that Phoenix would do that trade with Milwaukee, send Grayson Allen to Phoenix for Jay Crowder, or do you think that Milwaukee should keep Grayson Allen?
So the trade rumors, correct me if I'm wrong, were a little bit near the end of the summer before the preseason, because I know Jay Crowder didn't show up to their media day stuff, and it's like it's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
And Jay Crowder is one of those guys who, for some reason, I just was never a big fan of. He's not a bad player. He's a good defensive guy, but like he was just like one of those guys where he just kind of bothered me whenever the Bucks played him. Which is not the reason why, but I feel like trading Grayson Allen is not the best thing for the Bucks because he's obviously his trade value's gone up a little bit, but their chemistry is good. He's played with Joe Ingles. He's played with George Hill, obviously on the Bucks, but on the Jazz as well. Like the three of them.
Yeah.
Where I feel like at this point in the season, obviously we're only 12 games in, but he's slowly started to pick it up where he could be that like shooter when you get Pat and Chris and Joe back, where he might get still that starting role, but he could still be that like dark horse guy where he could get less minutes, but he could still be consistent outside of Jordan Nwora, kind of like reliability where you need that shooter. And Jay Crowder can shoot, but I know there's a lot of games where he will not shoot, especially in the playoffs because he was on the Suns when they were in the finals. But I feel like at this point in the season, at this point in Jay Crowder's career, I'm going to say no on the trade for Grayson Allen. You can trade other players for Jay Crowder, but I don't think Grayson Allen is the right guy to trade.
Yeah,
and
so
obviously we bashed him on earlier in the season.
Yep.
But I still think even when we were talking about his poor shooting, I knew he was going to do that the entire season. So I'm going to, sorry, you can go, but I'm going to say a no on the deal for Jay Crowder.
Yeah, so I'm kind of looking at this semi from a different lens. So let's see, Jay Crowder would be a better defender than Grayson Allen is at this point. Grayson Allen is a better 3-point shooter. Let's see. I would tend to agree with you because I think Grayson Allen does a great job of helping us space the floor. I think he can knock down shots, whereas Jay Crowder, for me, he's kind of like a giveth and taketh away kind of situation where he kind of like he'll make 2 or 3 and then he'll just like keep shooting them.
Yep.
And if he's cold, he's cold. And when he's hot, shooting wise. I know he's going to be a really dogged defender, kind of like Bobby. And he would kind of him and Bobby Portis could help fill that role for each other, where it's like they don't back down from anything. I think he would add an element of toughness to Milwaukee. But at the same time, I think really that's all he'd be doing because – and then, like, where would you put him? Like, would you would he come off the bench or would he start? Like, I don't know. It's just I don't know what the role exactly would be for Jay Crowder, because we know what the role is for Grayson Allen, where
Yep.
he's like fine coming off the bench. He can make open threes and play a little defense against guys his size. But for Jay Crowder, I just don't know what his role would be. Would he be? Because obviously, look, when we would get guys like Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton and Joe Ingles and Beauchamp coming off the bench. So I don't know where the role would be for Jay Crowder coming into that role.
Yeah, and I feel like it would just be we would lose Grayson Allen, which would be a hard loss, I think, overall for like how the Bucks play and like their like choice of shooting and their offensive game. And I just feel like Jay Crowder would be a rental where he probably would not be on the team after this year. It's like I see it as them just getting another PJ Tucker. You get the guard who's 6'4" to 6'7", who's just there for defense. And I feel like the Bucks have like really good defensive players already where it's not worth getting rid of a pretty dominant shooter if he has those games. For a $9 million Jay Crowder, who's 32, hasn't played this season yet. Who knows what could happen? Obviously, when they got PJ Tucker, he was playing for the Rockets, so it's not like it's hard. Obviously, he's a Marquette guy, where you always have like a soft spot for guys who played here. But I don't know. Again, like knowing his role, I agree on that. Like, where's he gonna be? What's he gonna do? And I just got a feeling he's gonna be a rental if they were to do it. And I feel like Grayson Allen is a better long term guy than Jay Crowder would be for one season.
Yeah.
Especially 12 games in, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably would still take a couple games, but I was very hesitant, but I feel like Grayson Allen is not the guy they should trade at this point. Even with his trade value up a little bit, I still think he could be helpful for them off the bench or even a starting role, but less minutes out of all the starters. Yeah, it's a weird situation, but overall, I think it's would not benefit the Bucks. It'd benefit the the Suns, but not the Bucks, especially if they're pushing for again another championship.
Yeah, and I'm Milwaukee because now the Suns, their replacement is out for a month. Quick aside, their replacement's out for a month. Cam Johnson with a torn meniscus in his knee. So, and Jay Crowder still says he's not coming back. So, yeah, it's a tough situation for Phoenix, but yeah, like I said, like hopefully they don't execute this trade and that Grayson Allen stays in Milwaukee. So, Evan, you got anything else?
Let me double check their schedule. I would say they need Drew and Giannis back, obviously, to win games, especially Drew. The ankle was, again, it makes sense that they benched him, or they benched him, but they sat him. But they got the Cavs, the Sixers, the Blazers, and the Bulls. So they're next, or the Hawks tomorrow, and then Cavs, Sixers, Blazers, and all three of those teams, or all four of those teams, obviously we know from the Hawks now, are teams where they're more than capable of beating the Bucks, and it will be a hard week or so going into the 21st of November, so getting near the end of the month, but they'll need at least Giannis back to beat some of these teams. The Cavs obviously went on that big streak, but they've lost, I think, back to back to the Kings and the Warriors. So we'll see. They'll need Giannis and Drew, I think, to win a lot of these games. But I'm positive for it. But yeah, it'll be an interesting week and a half or so, or into 2 weeks roughly. But I feel like Pat should be back by now too, and I haven't heard anything of him. Same with Chris. They said a few games out, but I don't want to rant or extend it more. But yeah, I think in the next Hawks, Cavs, Sixers, Blazers. I think they could go at least 2-2.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they can beat the Hawks, and I'm hoping they can beat the 76ers. They're away for the Sixers again, but the Cavs are a good team, and the Blazers have shown to be a good team this year too. So I would say out of all those four, I think they could go at least 2-2.
Yep. All right, so we'll see what happens for the Bucks as they play at home Monday and Wednesday to Atlanta, then Cleveland, and then obviously going back to Philly where they played opening night on Friday, and then obviously the Portland on next Monday. So we'll see what happens with that. This has been the Milwaukee Bucks on Tap podcast. We'll see you guys next week.